The crayon snapped in Maya's small hand. Red wax crumbled onto the kitchen table as she looked up at me, her eyes wide with childhood innocence. "It's okay, Sarah. I can get another one." The room went silent. My daughter had never called me Sarah before. I froze, wooden spoon suspended over the pasta sauce I'd been stirring. "What did you just call me?" Maya blinked, confused by my reaction. "Sarah." She said it with such confidence, such casualness, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "That's what Daddy calls you when you're not here." The wooden spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering against the edge of the pot. Marinara sauce splattered across the stovetop like drops of blood. "My name is Rebecca." 3 months earlier. You know what this means, right? I stared at the pregnancy test, the faint second line barely visible in the bathroom's harsh fluorescent light. Daniel stood beside me, his reflection in the mirror showing a face I couldn't quite read. It means Maya's going to be a big sister. I turned to look at my husband directly, searching for the excitement I desperately wanted to see. "We'd been trying for 8 months, Daniel nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Yeah, of course." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. That's amazing, Beck." Something in his hesitation made my stomach tighten. We'd been married for 9 years, together for 11. I knew every inflection in his voice, every micro-expression that crossed his face. This wasn't the reaction of a man thrilled about expanding our family. "Are you happy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel's arms tightened around me. "Of course I am. It's just, with the promotion, the new hours." He kissed my neck softly. "It's a lot of change at once." The promotion had come 3 months ago. Senior Creative Director at Paxley Advertising. The salary increase was substantial, but so were the hours. Daniel had been coming home later, more exhausted, more distant. I'd hoped the pregnancy would bring us closer again. "We'll figure it out," I said, leaning back into his embrace. "We always do." "We always do," he echoed. Later that night, I watched him from bed as he stood by the window, phone in hand, the blue light illuminating his face as he typed. His brow was furrowed in concentration, and occasionally the ghost of a smile would appear. "Work?" I asked. He startled slightly, turning to look at me with wide eyes. "Yeah, sorry. Chen needs the mock-ups for the Riversedge campaign by tomorrow." I patted his side of the bed. "Come to sleep. You can finish in the morning." Daniel hesitated, then nodded, setting his phone face down on the nightstand. When he slipped under the covers, he kept to his side. And for the first time in our marriage, the distance between us felt deliberate. The next morning, I woke to find Maya standing beside our bed, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Trunk! Daddy's already gone," she said, her voice small and disappointed. I blinked the sleep from my eyes, reaching for my phone. 6:42 a.m. Daniel usually left at 7:30. "Did he say where he was going, sweetie?" Maya shook her head, climbing onto the bed and settling into the warm spot Daniel had left behind. "He was talking on the phone. He looked sad." I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Daddy has a lot of work right now. But he loves us very much." "I know," Maya said. But her voice carried the uncertain lilt of a child who was beginning to notice the shifting dynamics of her world. Later, after dropping Maya at kindergarten, I stopped by Daniel's office. It was a spontaneous decision, one I justified as wanting to share lunch with my husband, maybe celebrate the pregnancy again in daylight, where his reaction might be warmer. The receptionist at Paxley, a young woman named Zoe with tortoiseshell glasses and a friendly smile, looked up from her computer. "Rebecca, so good to see you. Is Daniel around?" "I thought I'd surprise him with lunch." Zoe's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, he's not in yet. He called this morning about a client breakfast meeting at Lupo's. Said he'd be in around 11. I checked my watch. 10:45. Perfect timing then. I'll wait." I settled into one of the sleek lobby chairs, scrolling through my phone to pass the time. A text notification appeared from my sister Naomi. "Have you told him about the baby yet?" What did he say? I was typing a response when the elevator doors slid open. Daniel stepped out, laughing at something the woman beside him had said. She was tall, with an elegant sweep of dark hair and the kind of effortless style that spoke of money and confidence. As they walked into the lobby, I noticed how closely they stood, the casual brush of their shoulders, the lingering glance Daniel gave her before noticing me. His laughter died instantly. "Beck, what are you doing here?" I stood, suddenly feeling underdressed in my jeans and oversized sweater. "Surprise lunch date. I thought we could celebrate." The woman beside Daniel looked between us with polite interest. "This is my wife, Rebecca," Daniel said, his voice unnaturally formal. "Beck, this is Sarah Delaney, our new client from Riversedge." Sarah extended her hand, her grip firm and professional. "Rebecca, lovely to meet you. Your husband has been an absolute lifesaver with this campaign." I smiled, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. "Nice to meet you, too." Daniel placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward his office. "Let me just grab my wallet." Once inside, he closed the door and turned to me, his expression strained. "You could have called. Isn't the point of a surprise that I don't call?" He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since college. "It's just, I'm swamped today. The Riversedge pitch is tomorrow, and I've got back-to-back meetings all afternoon." "We had breakfast with a client that isn't scheduled to be in the office until 11? Daniel blinked. "What?" "Zoe said you called about a client breakfast at Lupo's." "Oh." He busied himself with shuffling papers on his desk. "Different client." Quick coffee before I met Sarah at her hotel to go over the presentation. The word hotel hung in the air between us. "Her hotel?" "She's from Chicago," Daniel said quickly. "Here for the week." I nodded, suddenly too tired to press further. "We can do lunch another day." Daniel's relief was palpable. "Dinner tonight. I'll be home by 7, I promise. We can tell Maya about the baby together." I forced a smile. "Sounds perfect." But Daniel wasn't home by 7 or 8. At 9:30, after putting Maya to bed alone, I texted him. "Everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Pitch prep running late. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at the message for a long time, then set my phone down without replying. The pattern continued for weeks. Late nights at the office. Weekend work sessions. Distracted conversations over hurried dinners. Each day, the distance between us grew, a chasm widening so gradually that I could almost pretend it wasn't happening. I was 12 weeks pregnant when the morning sickness finally subsided. Celebrating with a much-needed haircut, I sat in the salon chair as my stylist, Layla, worked her magic. "So how's Daniel handling the pregnancy?" she asked, combing through my damp hair. I hesitated. "Busy. The promotion has him working crazy hours." Layla nodded sympathetically. "Men, they bury themselves in work just when you need them most." "It's temporary," I said, more to convince myself than her. "Once the baby comes, things will settle." "Of course they will," Layla agreed. But her eyes held the knowing look of a woman who'd heard similar assurances before. As she swiveled my chair toward the mirror to show me the finished cut, I caught sight of a familiar figure through the salon window. Daniel, walking down the sidewalk across the street, his arm around a woman with dark hair. Even from this distance, I recognized Sarah's elegant profile, the way she leaned slightly into Daniel as they walked. I was out of the chair before Layla could stop me, throwing cash on the counter as I rushed outside. But by the time I reached the street, they had disappeared into the lunchtime crowd. That night, I waited for Daniel in the living room, the lights dimmed, our wedding album open on my lap. The photographs showed younger versions of ourselves, eyes bright with promise and certainty. When had that certainty begun to waver? The front door opened at 11:42 p.m. Daniel entered quietly, setting his keys on the entryway table with exaggerated care. "Hey," he said, startled to find me still awake. "You didn't have to wait up." "I saw you today," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "With Sarah." Daniel froze halfway through removing his coat. "What?" "Outside Layla's salon. You had your arm around her." He finished taking off his coat, hanging it with deliberate movements. She was upset about some revisions the CEO wanted. I was comforting a colleague. Is that all she is? A colleague? Daniel sighed, sinking into the armchair across from me. What are you asking me, Rebecca? I'm asking if you're having an affair. The question hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. No, he said finally. I'm not having an affair. He leaned forward, taking my hands in his. I would never do that to you. To us. I searched his face for signs of deception but found only exhaustion and what looked like genuine hurt. Then what's happening to us, Daniel? Because something is. He squeezed my hands. It's just work. The pressure, the hours. I know I've been absent. I'm sorry. He glanced at the wedding album. I miss us too. That night, for the first time in weeks, Daniel held me as we slept. I wanted desperately to believe him, to trust that the only betrayal was one of time and attention, not of hearts. But as I drifted off, the image of his arm around Sarah's waist played on repeat behind my closed eyes. The River Sedge campaign launched successfully. Daniel's team won an industry award for the creative direction. We celebrated with champagne for him and sparkling cider for me, my pregnancy now showing in the gentle curve of my belly. For a few weeks, things felt almost normal. Daniel was home more, present with Maya, excited about the baby's first ultrasound. It's a boy, the technician had told us, pointing to the indisputable evidence on the screen. Daniel had squeezed my hand, tears in his eyes. A son, he'd whispered, and in that moment I believed we would be okay. But then came the Westfield account. Another high-profile client. Another cycle of late nights and weekend work. The distance returned, wider than before. Mommy? Maya asked one night as I tucked her in. Is Daddy going to live with us forever? The question knocked the wind from me. Of course he is, sweetie. Why would you ask that? She shrugged, small fingers picking at a loose thread on her comforter. Ellie's daddy doesn't live with her anymore. He lives with someone else now. I sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Daddy and I love each other very much. And we both love you more than anything in the whole world. We're a family. Maya nodded, but her eyes held questions I wasn't ready to answer. Then came Daniel's business trip to Chicago. 3 days that stretched into 5. When he finally returned, there was a lightness to him I hadn't seen in months. He brought presents, a crystal unicorn for Maya, a cashmere scarf for me. I missed you both, he said, gathering us into a group hug. We missed you too, Daddy. Maya squealed. Over our daughter's head, Daniel's eyes met mine. I'm sorry it was longer than expected. Was it a successful trip? I asked, carefully neutral. Very. We landed the Westfield account. He kissed the top of Maya's head. And I've been thinking, maybe we should get away for a weekend. Just the 3 of us, before the baby comes. The suggestion was so unexpected, so welcome, that I felt tears spring to my eyes. I'd like that. For 2 days, Daniel was attentive, present, the man I'd married. Then I found the receipt. It was tucked in the pocket of his suit jacket as I was gathering clothes for the dry cleaner. A dinner receipt from a restaurant called Chez Louis in Chicago. 2 entrees, an expensive bottle of wine, dessert. The date matched the 3rd night of his trip. At the bottom, he'd scrawled a tip and signed his name with a heart, something he never did. I told myself there could be explanations. A client dinner, a signature flourish I'd never noticed before. But the knot in my stomach tightened. That evening, while Daniel bathed Maya, I checked his laptop. His email was open, and there, at the top of his inbox, was a message from Sarah. Thank you for a wonderful weekend. The air feels empty without you here. Counting the days until NYS, I closed the laptop, hands shaking. When Daniel came downstairs, Maya freshly pajamaed and smelling of bubble bath, I was waiting in the kitchen. She wants 3 bedtime stories tonight, he said, smiling as he opened the refrigerator. I negotiated down from 5. Who's S? I asked. Daniel turned slowly, a bottle of water in his hand. What? In your emails. Thanks you for a wonderful weekend. His face drained of color. You went through my emails? It was open on your laptop. Who is she, Daniel? Is it Sarah? He set the water bottle down with exaggerated care. Beck, you're making assumptions. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't lie to me anymore, please. Daniel's shoulders sagged. He leaned against the counter, suddenly looking much older than his 36 years. I never meant for this to happen. The confirmation, though expected, hit like a physical blow. I sank into a kitchen chair, one hand instinctively moving to protect my belly. How long? Rebecca, how long? He looked at the floor. Since the River Sedge campaign. About 5 months. 5 months. Half the duration of my pregnancy. While I'd been growing our child, he'd been growing a separate life. Do you love her? The question escaped before I could stop it. Daniel ran both hands through his hair, his wedding ring catching the light. I don't know. It's complicated. Does she know about me? About Maya? About this? I gestured to my pregnant belly. A flash of guilt crossed his face. Yes, she knows I'm married. About the kids. And she doesn't care? It's not like that. She's not trying to break up our family. We just connected. I laughed, a hollow sound. Connected, while disconnecting from your wife. I never stopped loving you, Beck. Or Maya. This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. The force of my shout surprised us both. I lowered my voice, conscious of Maya upstairs. You made vows to me. We built a life together. We're having another child. Daniel moved toward me, but I held up a hand to stop him. Don't! What do you want me to do? He asked, his voice small. I want you to go back in time and not betray everything we built together, I said, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. But since you can't do that, I want you to leave. Leave? I can't look at you right now. I need space to think. Daniel nodded slowly. I'll go to Alex's for a few days. Give you some time. He hesitated. What do we tell Maya? The mention of our daughter sent a fresh wave of pain through me. Tell her you have work. It's what she's used to hearing anyway, the barb landed. Daniel winced. I'll pack a bag. As he climbed the stairs, I remained at the kitchen table, one hand on my belly where our son occasionally kicked, blissfully unaware of the fracturing world around him. Daniel left that night with a duffel bag and hollow promises to call the next day. I told Maya he had an emergency work trip, adding another lie to the growing pile between us. The following week passed in a fog of grief and practical arrangements. I called my sister, who came immediately with grocery supplies and righteous anger. I called my obstetrician, explaining the situation in clinical terms that somehow made it easier to bear. I called a therapist, making an appointment I wasn't sure I would keep. Daniel called daily, his voice careful and contrite. Our conversations were brief, focused on logistics and Maya. Neither of us mentioned Sarah or the future. Then came the afternoon. Maya called me by another woman's name. Sarah, that's what Daddy calls you when. You're not here. Marinara sauce bubbled angrily on the stove, forgotten as I knelt before my daughter. When does Daddy call me Sarah, sweetie? Maya's attention had already returned to her coloring, the broken crayon replaced with a new one from the box. When he talks on the phone, he says, I miss you, Sarah, and I love you, Sarah. She looked up, brown eyes innocent. Is Sarah your other name? The room tilted slightly. I steadied myself against the table. No, honey. My name is Mommy to you and Rebecca to grown-ups. Maya's brow furrowed in confusion. Then why does Daddy call you Sarah? How do you explain adultery to a 6-year-old? How do you protect them from a truth that's already seeping into their world? Daddy must be talking to someone else named Sarah, I said carefully. Do you remember when Daddy was on these calls? Maya shrugged. Lots of times. When you go to the store, or when you take a shower. She returned to her coloring. Sometimes he gets mad if I listen. Each word was a knife twist. All those times Daniel had offered to watch Maya while I ran errands or took much-needed moments for myself. Had he been using them to maintain his relationship with Sarah? In our home? Within earshot of our child? Maya, did Daddy ever talk about Sarah when I wasn't around? She nodded, focused on staying within the lines of her drawing. He showed me her picture. She's pretty. She has black hair and red lips. My hands clenched into fists. Did you ever meet Sarah? Maya shook her head. Daddy said maybe someday. After things get fixed. Fixed? He said things are messy right now, but they'll get fixed, and then everything will be better. I stood on unsteady legs and turned off the stove. The sauce had burned, filling the kitchen with the acrid smell of scorched tomatoes. Maya, why don't you finish coloring in the living room while I clean this up? Once she was settled with her crayons and paper, I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. It went to voicemail. It's me. We need to talk. Now. It's about Maya. I ended the call and immediately texted him the same message. His response came within seconds. On my way. I sat at the kitchen table, mind racing. Daniel hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been integrating it into our family life, normalizing it for our daughter, perhaps preparing her for a future that included Sarah. The betrayal felt exponentially worse. 23 minutes later, I heard his key in the lock. Maya's excited cry of "Daddy!" echoed from the living room, followed by the sound of her running feet. Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway, Maya in his arms. His expression was guarded, uncertain. "Maya, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "Could you go upstairs and pick out a book for bedtime? Daddy and I need to talk." "But it's not bedtime yet," she protested. "Just to have it ready," Daniel added, setting her down. "Choose a good one." Once Maya's footsteps had retreated upstairs, Daniel turned to me. "What's going on? Your message scared me." I looked at him. This man I'd loved for over a decade and felt nothing but cold fury. "Maya called me Sarah today." The color drained from his face. "What?" "She said that's what you call me when I'm not around. That you say I miss you, Sarah, and I love you, Sarah, on the phone." My voice remained steady, detached, as if I were discussing someone else's marriage. "She said you showed her Sarah's picture and told her that maybe she'd meet her someday, after things get fixed." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were filled with shame. "Beck, I can explain." "No." I cut him off with a sharp gesture. "There's no explanation for this. You brought your affair into our home. You involved our daughter. You've been planning some kind of transition, haven't you?" He sank into a chair across from me, head in his hands. "It wasn't like that." "Not exactly. Then what was it like exactly?" Daniel looked up, his face haggard. "I never meant for Maya to overhear those conversations. And I only showed her Sarah's picture once, when she found a photo on my phone and asked who it was. I didn't want to lie." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't want to lie to our 6-year-old, but lying to your wife was fine?" "None of this is fine," he said quietly. "I've made a terrible mess of everything. What did you mean about things getting fixed? Were you planning to leave us?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. Oh my God. The reality crashed over me in waves. "You were." "You are?" "I don't know what I want anymore," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I love you and the kids. But with Sarah, it's—" "Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't tell me how special she is. Not in our kitchen. Not in our home." He nodded, properly chastised. "I'm sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught?" Daniel looked directly at me for the first time. Both. The honesty, at least, was refreshing. I placed both hands on my belly, feeling our son shift inside me. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow. Permanently." "Rebecca, no. Maya overheard you planning a future with another woman." "She's confused, Daniel. She thinks Sarah is my other name. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about protecting our children from your selfishness." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem. Go to Alex's, go to a hotel." I paused. "Go to Sarah." The mention of her name changed something in his expression, a softening I recognized with sickening clarity. It was the look he used to reserve for me. "I need time with Maya," he said. "She can't just lose her father overnight." "You should have thought of that before you started dismantling our family." I stood, suddenly exhausted. "We'll work out a visitation schedule through lawyers. For now, I want you gone." Daniel remained seated, looking lost in his own kitchen. "What do we tell Maya?" The truth. An age-appropriate version. I moved toward the doorway. We'll tell her together tonight. You owe her that much. As I left the kitchen, I heard Daniel's muffled sob behind me. Part of me wanted to turn back, to comfort him out of habit, if nothing else. But the larger part, the part protecting 2 children now, kept walking. Daniel moved out the next day, taking only essential clothing and personal items. The story we told Maya was simple. Daddy and Mommy were going to live in different houses for a while because they needed space to figure things out. She cried, asked if it was because of the baby brother in my tummy, then asked if she could have 2 bedrooms now. The resilience of children is both heartbreaking and healing. 2 weeks later, I was sorting through Daniel's remaining things when I found it, a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. It wasn't locked or hidden, just tucked between business books on his office shelf. The first entry was dated 6 months ago, right around when he'd met Sarah. I shouldn't have read it. I knew that even as I opened the cover. But after everything, I felt entitled to this small invasion, this glimpse into the mind of the man who had systematically betrayed me. The entries were sporadic, but revealing. Daniel wrote of his initial attraction to Sarah, his guilt, his attempts to resist. Then came entries documenting our growing distance, his justifications, his reframing of our marriage as something that had been failing long before Sarah entered the picture. The most recent entry, dated just before I'd discovered the affair, outlined his exit strategy, a timeline for leaving that included financial arrangements, custody considerations, and yes, introducing Maya to Sarah gradually. He'd planned it all, down to which weekends would be transition periods, where we'd co-parent under the same roof before he moved out permanently. The calculated nature of it made me physically ill. I was still holding the journal when my phone rang. Sarah Delaney. Daniel must have finally added her to his official contacts, and the sync settings we'd established years ago had brought her number to my phone as well. A cosmic joke. I answered before I could think better of it. Rebecca? Her voice was hesitant, with a slight tremor that suggested she was as surprised by my answering as I was. I thought this was Daniel's number. It's his old number, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. He changed it last week. Didn't he tell you? A pause. No, he didn't. She sounded genuinely confused. I'm sorry, don't hang up. The journal lay open in my lap, Daniel's methodical betrayal documented in his familiar handwriting. We should talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Probably not. But then again, sleeping with my husband while I'm pregnant with his child wasn't a good idea either, and that didn't stop you. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. Rebecca, I understand you're angry. You don't understand anything about me, I cut in, including the fact that my 6-year-old daughter knows who you are because my husband showed her your picture and promised she'd meet you after things get fixed. Another silence, longer this time. I didn't know that. There seems to be a lot you don't know. Like the fact that Daniel has been planning his exit from our marriage with the precision of a military campaign. I flipped through the journal pages. Did you know he calculated the optimal time to leave based on my pregnancy trimester? Apparently, the early third is best. Hormone levels stabilize, and the mother is physically well enough to handle the stress of separation. Rebecca, please. Please what? Please don't tell you what kind of man you're involving yourself with. Please don't point out that he's been lying to both of us. I found myself standing, pacing the length of Daniel's office. Did he tell you he loves you? A hesitation then. Yes. Did he tell you he wants to build a life with you? That he's been unhappy with me for years? That we've grown apart? Yes. Her voice was barely audible, and you believed him. It wasn't a question. I love him, Sarah said simply. The raw honesty in her voice stopped my pacing. I sank back into Daniel's office chair. So do I. Did. I don't know anymore. For a moment, we were just 2 women caught in the same man's web, both victims in different ways. I didn't set out to wreck your home, Sarah said finally. When we met, Daniel said things were already over between you in all but name. That you were staying together for your daughter. I laughed humorlessly. We were trying for a second child when he met you. Actively trying. Successfully, as it turns out. Oh, God. Her voice broke slightly. Yeah, I didn't know. A pause. Though I should have guessed. The signs were there. What signs? Sarah sighed. The way he'd disappear on weekends. How he never invited me to his place. The vague timeline for when we could be together officially. Another pause. The photo of you on his desk that never went away. A strange detail to fixate on, but it lodged in my chest like a splinter. Daniel had kept my picture on his desk, even while methodically planning to leave me. Where is he now? I asked. I thought he was with you, Sarah replied. He told me he needed space to sort things out with Maya. That's why I was calling. I hadn't heard from him in 3 days. The realization settled over both of us simultaneously. Daniel wasn't with either of us. He's running, I said flatly. Or giving us both space, Sarah suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. Check his social media, I said, already pulling up Instagram on my phone. He never posts, but he looks at stories obsessively. We fell into an unexpected collaboration, 2 women tracking the man who had deceived them both. Instagram showed he'd been active 2 hours ago. His credit card, still linked to our joint account monitoring app, showed a charge at a gas station in Vermont that morning. Vermont? Sarah sounded as confused as I felt. Does he know people there? A memory surfaced, a conversation from years ago before Maya was born. Daniel talking about a cabin his college roommate had inherited, a place where he'd spent a few peaceful weekends fishing and hiking. I think I know where he is, I said, and I'm going to find him. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, a note of concern in her voice. I'm going to make him face what he's done, to both of us. I ended the call and immediately began packing a bag. The rational part of my brain screamed that driving 6 hours to Vermont while 7 months pregnant to confront my cheating husband was insanity. The wounded part didn't care. I called my sister to ask if Maya could stay with her overnight. I called Daniel's college roommate, using a story about a surprise weekend to extract the cabin's address. I ignored 3 calls from Sarah, who had apparently thought better of our temporary alliance. By late afternoon, I was northbound on I-91, the journal in my passenger seat like a silent witness. The cabin was exactly as Daniel had described it years ago, a rustic A-frame set back from a quiet lake, accessible via a narrow dirt road that wound through dense forest. His car was parked outside, confirming my suspicion. I pulled in behind him and cut the engine. For several minutes I sat in silence, gathering my courage. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the water. In another life, this might have been a romantic getaway for us. The cabin door opened before I reached it. Daniel stood framed in the doorway, shock evident on his face. Rebecca? How did you find you? It wasn't that hard. You're predictable in your unpredictability. I moved past him into the cabin, noticing the whiskey bottle on the coffee table, the rumpled blanket on the couch. Running away seems to be your specialty lately. I'm not running away, he said, closing the door behind me. I needed time to think. Think about what? Which woman you're going to disappoint next? I pulled his journal from my bag and tossed it onto the coffee table. Or were you updating your exit strategy? Daniel's eyes fixed on the journal, then lifted to mine. You read it, I did. Very illuminating. You should consider a career in project management if advertising doesn't work out. Your timeline for destroying our family was impressively detailed. He winced, sinking onto the couch. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I remained standing, one hand supporting my lower back where pregnancy pain had settled after the long drive. What I can't figure out is why you're hiding from both of us. Sarah called your old number today, looking for you. She seemed just as confused as I am. Daniel's head snapped up. You spoke to Sarah? We had quite the conversation. Comparing notes, so to speak. I moved to the window, looking out at the darkening lake. She didn't know about a lot of things, including the fact that we were actively trying for a baby when you met her. I was going to tell her. When? After our son is born? After you've moved on to wife number 3? I turned to face him. You're a coward, Daniel. I know. He didn't try to defend himself. I've made a complete mess of everything. That's putting it mildly. Daniel reached for the whiskey bottle, then seemed to think better of it. Why did you come here, Rebecca? To tell me what I already know, that I'm the villain in this story. I came because I deserve answers. Real ones, not the convenient half-truths you've been feeding both of us. I moved closer, forcing him to look at me. Did you ever love me, or was that a lie too? Of course I loved you. I still do. His voice cracked. That's what makes this so impossible. You don't destroy someone you love. Sometimes you do. Sometimes loving two people tears you apart until you make terrible choices just to stop the pain. He ran a hand through his hair, which was longer and more unkempt than I'd ever seen it. I never planned to fall for Sarah. I fought it for months. But then it was easier to give in than to honor your commitments. I finished for him. It wasn't about ease. It was about feeling alive again. With Sarah, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. The words cut deeper than I expected. And with me? Daniel looked at me with naked honesty. With you, I felt like I was playing a role. Husband, father, provider. All the parts without the person underneath. That's not on me, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I never asked you to disappear into those roles. No, you didn't. That was my failure. He gestured helplessly. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself in trying to be what everyone needed. And then Sarah came along, and she just wanted me. The unfinished, flawed version. Not the perfect husband or father. So you decided to be neither. Daniel flinched. I told you I'm not running away. I'm trying to find a way forward that doesn't destroy everyone I care about. That ship has sailed. I sank into the chair opposite him, suddenly exhausted. You've already destroyed our family. Maya overhead you planning your life with Sarah. She's confused and hurt. And this baby... I placed both hands on my belly. This child will be born into the wreckage you've created. I never meant. Stop saying that. My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. Your intentions don't matter. Your actions do. You lied, you cheated, you plotted, you involved our daughter. And now you're hiding in the woods feeling sorry for yourself while 2 women and a child try to make sense of the chaos you've created. Daniel was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on his clasped hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. You're right. About all of it. I've been selfish and cowardly, and I've hurt everyone I care about. He took a shaky breath. What do you want me to do now? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on confronting him, on making him feel the pain he'd caused, that I hadn't thought about what came next. I struggled to articulate what I truly wanted. I want you to stop hiding. I want you to face what you've done and take responsibility for it. Not in this cabin, not in some journal, but in the real world where your actions have consequences. And then what? Then you decide. Sarah or me. A clean break or a genuine attempt to rebuild what you've broken. But no more limbo. No more exit strategies and secret plans. Just truth, however painful it might be. Daniel nodded slowly. And if the truth is that I don't know? That I'm lost and confused and terrified of making another mistake? Then you say that, out loud. To both of us. I stood, gathering my bag. But you don't get to disappear again. I moved toward the door, then paused. I'm staying at the motel by the highway tonight. I'm too tired to drive back. Tomorrow morning, I'm going home to our daughter. I looked at him over my shoulder. You need to decide where home is for you. As I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin, Daniel called after me. Rebecca. I turned. I'm sorry. His voice broke on the words. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I see the damage I've done. To you most of all. I nodded once, not trusting my voice, and walked to my car. The motel room was exactly what you'd expect. Faded floral bedspreads, laminate furniture, a bathroom with temperamental plumbing. I sat on the edge of the bed, too wired to sleep despite my exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Maya's fine. Having a pizza and movie night. How are you? I started to type a response, then stopped. How was I? Angry, hurt, strangely relieved to have everything in the open. Terrified of what came next. Before I could respond, another text came through, from an unknown number. It's Sarah. Daniel called me. He told me where you are. Can we talk? I'm at the diner across from your motel. I stared at the message, trying to process this latest twist. Sarah was here, in this tiny Vermont town. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to crawl under the covers and pretend none of this was happening. But the larger part, the part that had driven 6 hours for answers, needed to see this through. 20 minutes later, I slid into a booth across from Sarah Delaney. In person, without the filter of shock and anger, I could see why Daniel had been drawn to her. She was beautiful in an understated way, with intelligent eyes and a quiet confidence. She looked as exhausted as I felt. Thank you for coming, she said, pushing a cup of tea toward me. Chamomile, caffeine-free. I accepted the cup with a nod. You didn't drive all the way from Chicago, Boston. I've been based there for the past month, setting up our East Coast office. Sarah traced the rim of her own mug. Daniel told me everything tonight. About the baby. About Maya overhearing. About the journal. Did he tell you he's been lying to both of us? She nodded. Yes. He admitted he'd painted our marriage as already over when it wasn't. That he'd been actively trying to have a second child with you when we met. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I want you to know that I would never have started anything with him if I'd known the truth. I'm not that person. And yet here we are. Here we are. She agreed quietly. We sat in silence for a moment. The diner nearly empty around us save for a truck driver at the counter and a waitress refilling coffee pots. What did he tell you about us? I asked finally. About me? Sarah hesitated. He said you were kind, smart, a wonderful mother. That you deserved better than what he'd done to you. The unexpected answer caught me off guard. He said that? She nodded. He also said that he'd convinced himself that he'd fallen out of love with you years ago, but that seeing you tonight made him realize that was another lie he'd told himself to justify his actions. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, anchoring myself. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. All of it. Sarah took a deep breath. Daniel called me from the cabin after you left. He was broken, saying he'd ruined everything, that he didn't deserve either of us. She paused. Then he told me he was driving back to the city tonight, to move his things out of my apartment and to sign whatever papers you need him to sign. He's choosing you, I said flatly. No. Sarah shook her head. He's choosing neither of us. He said we both deserve better than a man who couldn't be honest, even with himself. Her eyes glistened. He's right. I felt a strange mix of emotions, vindication, grief, a whisper of respect for Daniel's belated moment of self-awareness. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know about him, but I'm going back to Chicago next week, permanently. Sarah met my gaze steadily. I came here tonight because I wanted to apologize. Face to face. And because I thought you should know that whatever Daniel decides, I'm removing myself from the equation. I studied her, this woman who had unknowingly become entangled in my family's implosion. You love him. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. I do. But love that's built on lies isn't sustainable. And she glanced at my belly. There are children involved. That changes everything. The simple acknowledgement that my children mattered, that they changed the calculus of this situation, resonated more deeply than any apology could have. Thank you, I said quietly. Sarah nodded, then slid out of the booth. I should go. My flight's early tomorrow, she paused. I truly am sorry, Rebecca, for all of it. I watched her leave. This woman I'd imagined as a faceless enemy for months, now reduced to what she really was, another person caught in Daniel's web of deception, trying to find her way out with dignity. I returned home the following afternoon to find Maya playing in the front yard with my sister. The sight of my daughter, carefree and laughing as she chased bubbles across the grass, brought tears to my eyes. Whatever happened between Daniel and me, protecting her happiness would always be my priority. "Mommy!" She ran to me, wrapping her arms around my legs. Daddy called. "He's coming for dinner." I looked at my sister, who shrugged apologetically. "He called this morning. Said he needed to talk to both of you." By 6 o'clock, the three of us were seated around our kitchen table, Maya chattering about her night with her aunt, Daniel and I exchanging cautious glances over her head. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and yesterday's stubble shadowing his jaw. But there was something different in his demeanor, a clarity that hadn't been there at the cabin. After Maya was in bed, we sat in the living room, the space between us on the couch, a physical manifestation of our emotional distance. "I spoke with Sarah last night," I said. Daniel nodded. "I know. She told me." He looked down at his hands. "She's going back to Chicago. She said you're choosing neither of us. It's not about choosing." He looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "It's about recognizing that I need to fix myself before I can be with anyone, that I've been running from something that has nothing to do with you or Sarah, some emptiness I've been trying to fill with external validation instead of doing the hard work of figuring out who I am and what I really want." It sounded like therapy speak, but his sincerity was unmistakable. "So what does that mean practically?" I asked. "For us? For Maya? For the baby?" "Practically, it means I've found an apartment nearby, close enough to be present for the kids, but separate enough to give us both space." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It means I'm starting therapy next week. It means I want to be fully involved with both children, but I understand that trust is earned, not given." "And us?" Daniel's expression softened. "That's up to you, Beck. I've forfeited the right to have expectations there." I studied him. This man I'd loved for more than a decade, the father of my children, now simultaneously familiar and a stranger. I don't know what I want yet. I'm still too angry. I understand. But I do know that I don't want to make any permanent decisions right now. I placed a hand on my belly. Our son deserves parents who have at least tried everything before walking away. Hope flickered in Daniel's eyes, but he tamped it down quickly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we take it slow. You get your apartment. You do your therapy. We focus on co-parenting and rebuilding basic trust." I took a deep breath. "And maybe eventually, we see if there's anything left to salvage." "I'd like that," Daniel said quietly. "More than you know. But if I ever find out you're lying to me again, about anything, we're done. Permanently." "Understood." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for even considering giving me another chance. I'm not doing it for you," I said honestly. "I'm doing it for our children. And for myself, because I need to know I did everything possible before walking away." Daniel nodded. "Fair enough." As he prepared to leave, gathering his coat and keys, he paused at the door. "Rebecca, yes? For what it's worth, Sarah was right about one thing." "What's that?" "You do deserve better than what I've done to you. And I'm going to spend however long you'll let me trying to be that better version. For you, for the kids, and for myself." I didn't respond, but I didn't need to. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, filled with hard conversations and harder choices. But for the first time in months, it felt like we were both facing the same direction. 6 months later. "Sarah," Maya says, looking up from her coloring book. I freeze momentarily, then force myself to remain calm. "What about her, sweetie?" "That's not your name, is it?" The question catches me by surprise. "No, honey. My name is Mommy to you and Rebecca to grown-ups. Remember?" Maya nods, returning to her coloring. "I know, Daddy told me he made a mistake. Sarah is somebody else." I look across the room to where Daniel sits with our 3-month-old son, Ethan, cradled in his arms. He meets my gaze, his eyes communicating volumes. Remorse, gratitude, tentative hope. "Yes," I say, smoothing Maya's hair. "Sarah is somebody else." In the month since Vermont, we've built a new routine. Daniel lives 20 minutes away, but comes over 4 evenings a week for dinner and bedtime rituals. He attends therapy twice weekly. He was present for Ethan's birth, holding my hand through 18 hours of labor, weeping when they placed our son on my chest. We are not back together, not in the way we once were. That relationship died in the kitchen when Maya innocently spoke another woman's name. But something new is growing in its place, more honest, more intentional, built on the painful wisdom that comes only through breaking and rebuilding. I don't know if we'll find our way back to each other completely. Some days, the hurt still feels too raw. Other days, watching Daniel read to Maya or sing to Ethan, I glimpse the man I fell in love with, now tempered by hard-earned humility. What I do know is this: my name is Rebecca. I am not Sarah. I am a mother, a survivor, a woman finding her strength in the aftermath of betrayal. And whatever happens between Daniel and me, that truth remains unshaken. As I watch my family, broken but healing, fragmented but still connected, I understand that sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most necessary transformations. Maya's innocent confusion 6 months ago shattered the illusion of our perfect life. But in doing so, it cleared the way for something real to take its place. And that, perhaps, is the most unexpected gift of all.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.